I thought marrying a white billionaire CEO was my upgrade until my father's funeral became the day she realized she'd been playing the wrong game all along. See, when the lawyer read my dad's will, Charlotte's perfectly painted smile cracked wide open. $4.3 million, dollars, none of it hers. Every single cent left to my first wife, a woman I hadn't seen in almost a decade. But here's the twist Charlotte never saw coming. My father wasn't just protecting his money, he was protecting my son, a 7-year-old boy I didn't even know existed until a dead man's letter told me the truth. Now, I'm standing at a crossroads between the penthouse life she promised me and the family I never knew I had, and the woman who married me for my inheritance is about to learn that some revenge doesn't need an audience. It just needs you to walk away. If you're watching this, subscribe and tell me where you're from, because this story gets darker before it gets better. The grease under. My nails never bothered me. Most mornings, I'd stand in the garage bay with a wrench in my hand and feel like I'd earned my place in the world. Honest work, clean money, no games. That morning started like any other Tuesday. The sun hadn't even cleared the buildings yet, and I was already pulling open the metal gate at Reed's Tow and Repair. The scrape of metal on concrete echoed down the empty street. "You're early, man," Julio called from his beat-up Honda as he parked. He climbed out with 2 paper cups of gas station coffee. "Couldn't sleep again?" I took the coffee and shrugged. "Just got a lot on my mind." "Your pops?" I nodded. My dad, Harold, had been in and out of the hospital for the past month. Nothing the doctors said made me feel better. They kept running tests, kept saying words like monitoring and progression. I hated how vague it all sounded. "He's tougher than he looks," Julio said, clapping me on the shoulder. "That man raised you by himself. He's not going anywhere without a fight." I wanted to believe that, but when your father starts looking smaller every time you visit, it's hard to keep the fear quiet. We opened the shop and got to work. I had a tow scheduled for 9 and 2 oil changes before noon. Normal stuff. The kind of routine that kept my head clear. Then my phone rang. The hospital. My chest tightened before I even answered. "Mr. Reed?" The nurse's voice was calm. Too calm. "Your father's doctor would like you to come in today. His test results came back and they'd like to discuss next steps." Next steps? That phrase made my stomach turn. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said. Julio looked up from under the hood of a Civic. "Everything okay?" "I gotta go see my dad." He wiped his hands on a rag and nodded. "Go, I got this." The hospital smelled like disinfectant and worry. I hated that smell. I found my dad in a room on the 3rd floor. He was sitting up in bed, staring out the window. He looked tired. Not old, just tired. "Hey, Pops," I said, stepping inside. He turned and smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Marcus, you didn't have to rush over." "Yeah, I did." I pulled a chair close to the bed and sat down. For a minute, we didn't say anything. Just two men trying not to talk about the thing that scared us both. "They say anything new?" I finally asked. He shook his head. "Same song, different verse. They want to keep an eye on things." He paused, then looked at me hard. "But I didn't call you here to talk about me." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you need to be careful, son. Especially now." "Careful about what?" He leaned back against the pillows and sighed. "Fast love. The kind that shows up when you're vulnerable. The kind that smells opportunity." I didn't know what to say. My dad wasn't usually the type to give warnings about relationships. He trusted me to handle my own life. "I'm serious, Marcus," he said, his voice low. "When people know you got something worth taking, they change. They smile different, talk different, and if you're not careful, you'll mistake that smile for something real." I nodded slowly. "I hear you, Pops." But I didn't really understand. Not yet. I left the hospital around noon and headed back toward the garage. I was halfway down the corridor when I nearly walked straight into someone. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said, stepping back. I looked up and froze. She was beautiful. Not in the regular way, in the kind of way that made you forget how to talk for a second. White woman, maybe early 30s, with perfect blonde hair pulled back in a low ponytail. She wore a long coat that probably cost more than my truck, and her shoes clicked on the tile like little announcements of wealth. "No, that was my fault," I said, finding my voice. "I wasn't looking." She smiled. It was a controlled smile, practiced. "You look like you've got a lot on your mind." "Yeah, just visiting my dad." Her expression softened, and for a moment, I thought I saw something real there. "Is he okay?" "Getting there," I lied. She tilted her head slightly, studying me. "You're Marcus, aren't you? Harold's son?" I blinked. "How do you know my dad?" "I don't, really, but I've seen you here before. I'm Charlotte Whitmore. My company has a partnership with the Hospital Foundation." She extended a hand. Her nails were perfect. Everything about her was perfect. I shook her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. "I've noticed you coming and going," she continued. "You're very loyal. Not everyone visits family as often as you do." It felt like a compliment and a test at the same time. "Family's all I got," I said simply. She looked at me for a long moment like she was deciding something. Then she pulled out her phone. "Can I give you my number? Just in case. You need anything. For your father. I know people. I can help." I should have said no. Looking back, I should have walked away right then. But I didn't. I gave her my number. That night, I was sitting on my couch in my small apartment, staring at the TV without really watching it, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I opened the message. "How's your father? I can help. Charlotte." I stared at those words for a long time. Something about them felt wrong. Too eager. Too quick. But another part of me, the part that was scared and tired and desperate for someone to tell me everything would be okay, wanted to respond. I typed back, "He's resting. Thanks for asking." Three dots appeared immediately. "Good. Let me know if you need anything. I mean it." I set the phone down and rubbed my face. My dad's warning echoed in my head. Fast love. The kind that shows up when you're vulnerable. But Charlotte didn't feel dangerous. She felt interested. And I hadn't felt interesting in a long time. The next morning, Julio was waiting for me at the garage with that look. The one that said he already knew I'd done something dumb. "What?" I asked, unlocking the gate. "You tell me," he said, following me inside. "You got that look." "What look?" "The I met a woman and I'm thinking about her too much look." I laughed despite myself. "Man, you don't know what you're talking about." "Uh-huh. So who is she?" I hesitated, then told him about Charlotte, about how we met, about the text. Julio set down his coffee and crossed his arms. "Rich white woman just happens to bump into you at the hospital? And now she's texting you? Marcus, come on." "What?" "That's rich people theater, man. She probably Googled you the second you walked away." "Why would she do that?" Julio gave me a look. "Because rich folks don't do anything by accident." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. Before I could say anything else, I heard the click of heels on concrete. I turned. Charlotte stood in the open garage bay, looking completely out of place in her designer coat and perfect hair. She smiled when she saw me. "Hi," she said. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Julio muttered something under his breath and walked away. Charlotte didn't seem bothered by the grease or the noise or the fact that she was standing in a garage that smelled like oil and old tires. She walked right up to me and watched me work. "This is impressive," she said. "You really know what you're doing." I tightened a bolt and glanced at her. "It's just a job." No, she said, it's a skill. There's a difference. I didn't know what to say to that. She watched me for a few more minutes, then asked, Have you eaten? I know a place nearby. Quiet. Good food. Let me buy you lunch. I should have said no. I had work to do. I had bills to pay. I had a dad in the hospital and a life that didn't leave room for distractions. But I looked at her standing there, waiting for my answer with that calm, confident smile, and I heard myself say, Yeah, okay. The cafe she took me to wasn't like any place I'd ever been. White, tablecloths, cloth napkins, a waiter who called me sir like he meant it. I felt out of place. Charlotte noticed. Relax, she said, leaning forward. You belong here just as much as anyone else. I wasn't sure I believed that. She ordered for both of us without asking, and I let her. She talked about her work, something about real estate and development and board meetings. I nodded along, but I was mostly watching her, the way she moved her hands when she talked, the way she smiled when she wanted something. Then she shifted the conversation. Tell me about your father, she said. What kind of man is he? I talked, more than I meant to. I told her about how my dad raised me alone after my mom left, how he worked 2 jobs to keep me fed, how he taught me to fix engines and be honest and never owe anyone anything. Charlotte listened like every word mattered. He sounds like a good man, she said softly, a man who built something real. He did. She reached across the table and touched my hand, just for a second. You're like him, I can tell. I pulled my hand back, not because I didn't like it, but because it felt too fast, too much. She didn't seem offended. She just smiled. By the time we left, the sun was setting. She walked me to my truck and stood close, closer than necessary. I want to see you again, she said. Tonight. Charlotte, please. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I saw something I recognized: loneliness, control, need. I should have walked away, but I didn't. Charlotte's penthouse felt like a different planet: floor to ceiling windows, city lights stretching out like a carpet of stars, furniture that looked too expensive to sit on. The air even smelled rich, like leather and fresh flowers and money. I stood in her living room and tried not to touch anything. Make yourself comfortable, Charlotte said, kicking off her heels. She walked to a bar cart and poured 2 glasses of wine without asking if I wanted any. I sat on the edge of the couch. My work boots looked dirty against her white rug. She handed me a glass and sat down next to me, close. Her leg almost touched mine. You seem nervous, she said. I'm not used to places like this. You'll get used to it. There was something in the way she said that, like it was a promise or a plan. She showed me photos on her phone, pictures of her at charity events, standing next to people in expensive suits, pictures of her cutting ribbons and shaking hands with city officials, pictures of boardrooms and galas and a life I couldn't imagine living. This is my world, she said, scrolling slowly. It's exhausting sometimes. Everyone wants something. Everyone's performing. Then why do it? I asked. She looked at me like the question surprised her. Because it's what I'm good at: control, strategy, winning. The word winning stuck in my head. She set down her phone and turned toward me. You're different, Marcus. You don't want anything from me. I barely know you. Exactly. She leaned in. That's why I like you. Then she kissed me. It was deliberate, controlled, like everything else about her. I kissed her back, but part of me was still sitting on that couch wondering how I'd gotten here, wondering what she really saw when she looked at me. We didn't talk much after that. She poured more wine, asked me questions about my childhood, about the garage, about my dreams. I answered, but it felt like she was cataloging everything, taking notes. Around midnight, my phone rang. The hospital again. I pulled away and answered. Hello? Mr. Reed, this is Dr. Patel. I'm sorry to call so late, but your father's test results came back. We need you here first thing in the morning. There are some complications we need to discuss. My stomach dropped. What kind of complications? We'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you be here by 8? Yeah, I'll be there. I hung up and stared at, and the phone in my hand. Charlotte touched my shoulder. What's wrong? My dad? They want me back at the hospital tomorrow. Her face shifted, not worried, practical. We need to be prepared, she said. I frowned. Prepared for what? For whatever happens next. She paused. Has your father updated his will recently? The question hit me wrong. Too fast. Too sharp. I don't know, I said slowly. Why? Because if something happens, Marcus, you need to make sure you're protected. That's all I'm saying. I stood up. I should go. Marcus, I need to think. I'll call you tomorrow. She walked me to the door, but I could feel the shift between us, the way her warmth cooled just a little when I didn't give her the answer she wanted. I rode home in a rideshare, staring out the window, replaying her words in my head. We need to be prepared. Has your father updated his will? My dad's warning came back to me, louder this time. Fast love. The kind that shows up when you're vulnerable. The next morning, I sat in a cold hospital chair next to my dad's bed. He looked smaller than yesterday, thinner. Dr. Patel explained the situation in words I barely understood. Something about his liver, something about treatment options, something about time. The only thing I heard clearly was, we can't give you a definite timeline, but you should prepare for changes. My dad took it better than I did. He just nodded and thanked the doctor. When we were alone, he looked at me. Don't make that face, son. What face? The one that says you're trying to fix something you can't fix. I swallowed hard. I just want you to be okay. I will be, one way or another. He reached over and squeezed my hand. But I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't let people use you, especially now. You're vulnerable, and vultures can smell that a mile away. Before I could respond, there was a knock at the door. Charlotte walked in carrying a huge bouquet of flowers. She smiled at the nurses as she passed, and they smiled back like she was a celebrity. Harold, she said warmly, I hope you don't mind me stopping by. My dad's face stayed neutral, polite, but I saw the way his jaw tightened. Charlotte, he said, that's kind of you. She set the flowers on the table and turned to me. I wanted to check on you both. She stayed for 10 minutes, talking about nothing important, making small talk that felt performative. When she finally left, the room felt colder. My dad waited until her footsteps faded down the hall. That woman is counting your inheritance before I'm gone, he said quietly. Dad, she's not. Marcus. He looked at me hard. I've been around long enough to know when someone's playing chess and when someone's playing checkers. That woman is 3 moves ahead of you. I wanted to defend her, but I couldn't. That afternoon, Charlotte called me. How's your father? She asked. He's hanging in. There. Good. Listen, I want you to meet my mother tonight. Family dinner. Just us. I hesitated. Charlotte, I don't think. Marcus, if we're serious, you need to meet her. She needs to see who you are. We've only known each other a few days. And when you know, you know. Her voice softened. Please, for me. I should have said no, but I was tired and scared, and she made me feel like maybe I wasn't alone. Okay, I said. What time? The Whitmore estate looked like something out of a movie. Iron gates, a long driveway lined with trees, a house that was too big to be called a house. I stood outside the front door in my cleanest shirt and newest jeans, feeling like I was about to walk into a courtroom. Charlotte opened the door and smiled. You look great. I didn't feel great. She led me inside, and I tried not to stare at the chandelier or the marble floors or the paintings that probably cost more than my truck. Evelyn Whitmore was waiting in the dining room. She was tall, blonde like Charlotte, and had a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Marcus, she said, extending a hand. Charlotte has told me so much about you. I shook her hand. Her grip was cold. Thank you for having me, ma'am. Oh, please, call me Evelyn. She gestured to the table. Sit. Let's eat. Dinner was the longest hour of my life. Evelyn asked questions that sounded like compliments but felt like tests. So, you own a garage? That must be rewarding. Working with your hands. It is. And you're entirely self taught? How resourceful. My dad taught me most of it. Ah, yes. Harold. Charlotte mentioned he's unwell. I'm so sorry. It must be difficult managing everything on your own. Every sentence had a hook in it. Then, halfway through the main course, someone else walked in. A man, white, mid-30s, expensive suit, perfect teeth. Trey, Evelyn said brightly. What a surprise. It wasn't a surprise. I could tell by the way Charlotte's face didn't change. Trey shook my hand too hard. Marcus, right? I've heard a lot about you. Trey is an old family friend, Evelyn explained, and Charlotte's, well, they dated for a few years. Before you, of course. Trey smiled. Ancient history. Charlotte laughed it off, but I saw the game being played. Trey sat down across from me and dominated the conversation. He talked about business deals and vacations and people I'd never heard of. Every story was a reminder that he belonged here and I didn't. Evelyn kept steering the conversation back to me with questions that sounded innocent but weren't. You must be so strong, Marcus. All that physical work. You're very articulate. Where did you go to school? You've certainly survived a lot. That takes character. Each word was a cut disguised as kindness. Charlotte didn't defend me. She just smiled and nodded along like I was passing some kind of test. By the time dessert came, I wanted to leave. But I stayed. Because walking out felt like losing. On the drive back to my apartment, Charlotte was cheerful. You handled that so well, she said like I'd won something. Your mom doesn't like me. She doesn't like anyone. Don't take it personally. She reached over and squeezed my hand. But I like you. That's what matters. We pulled up outside my building and she turned to me. We should get married soon, she said. I stared at her. What? I'm serious. For stability. For us. She paused. Before anything happens to your father. My stomach turned. Charlotte, that's. She kissed me before I could finish the sentence. When she pulled back, she whispered, Think about it. Then she drove away, leaving me standing on the sidewalk, feeling like I'd just signed a contract I hadn't read. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table staring at a courthouse marriage pamphlet Charlotte had printed and left in my truck. My phone rang. Julio. You busy? He asked. Not really. Good. Get over. Here. We need to talk. I met Julio at the garage during his lunch break. He took one look at my face and shook his head. You're in deep, aren't you? I told him everything. The hospital, Charlotte, the dinner, the proposal. When I finished, Julio leaned back against the workbench and crossed his arms. Man, love doesn't rush you with paperwork. She says it's for stability. Stability for who? Julio looked at me hard. Marcus, I've known you your whole life. You're smart, you're good, but you're also the kind of guy who wants to save everybody. And that woman, she don't need saving. She needs controlling. I knew he was right, but I didn't know how to stop. That evening, I went to see my dad again. He was awake, staring out the window. I sat down and told him Charlotte wanted to get married, immediately. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, he asked one question. Do you feel loved or managed? I opened my mouth to answer, but no words came out. He nodded slowly. That's what I thought. He reached into the drawer beside his bed and pulled out an envelope. If something happens to me, he said, you read this. Not before. You understand. I took the envelope. My name was written on the front in his handwriting. Dad, promise me, Marcus. I promise. He leaned back and closed his eyes. Good. Now get out of here. Go think about what kind of man you want to be. I sat in my truck in the hospital parking lot, staring at that envelope. Part of me wanted to open it right then, but I'd made a promise. So I started the engine and drove home, my dad's question echoing in my head. Do you feel loved or managed? I knew the answer. I just wasn't ready to admit it yet. I married Charlotte 3 weeks later. It happened fast. Too fast. The kind of fast that doesn't leave room for second thoughts. We stood in front of a judge at the courthouse on a Thursday afternoon. No family, no friends, just a couple of witnesses. The court provided and a ceremony that lasted 7 minutes. Charlotte wore white. I wore the only suit I owned. When the judge said, "You may kiss the bride," Charlotte kissed me like she'd won something. Maybe she had. My dad died 6 days after the wedding. The doctors said it was peaceful, that he went in his sleep, that he didn't suffer. But when I got the call at 4 in the morning, none of that mattered. All I knew was that he was gone, and I hadn't been there. I sat on the edge of my bed in Charlotte's penthouse, our penthouse now, and stared at the wall. Charlotte woke up and put her hand on my back. I'm so sorry, Marcus. Her voice was soft, sympathetic, but there was something else underneath it, something that sounded like relief. I need to go, I said. Go where? To the hospital, to see him. Marcus, he's gone. There's nothing you can do. I pulled away from her. I need to see him. She didn't argue. She just watched me get dressed with those calm, calculating eyes. At the hospital, they let me sit with him for a while. He looked smaller than ever, quieter. I held his hand and cried like I hadn't cried since I was a kid. A nurse came in after a while and handed me a plastic bag with his belongings, his wallet, his watch, his wedding ring from my mom, the one he never stopped wearing even after she left, and an envelope, the one he'd given me weeks ago, the one with my name on it. I stared at it for a long time. Then I put it in my jacket pocket and left. The funeral was small. Julio came, a few guys from the garage, some of my dad's old coworkers. Charlotte stood beside me in a black dress and heels, shaking hands and saying the right things to the right people. She looked perfect, composed, like she'd done this 100 times before. Evelyn came too. She hugged me and said, Harold was a good man. You should be proud. But her eyes were already looking past me, calculating. Trey showed up for 10 minutes, shook my hand, and left. After it was over, Charlotte drove us back to the penthouse. She ordered food, poured wine, turned on soft music. I sat on the couch and stared at nothing. You need to eat, she said gently. I'm not hungry. She sat beside me and took my hand. I know this is hard, but we'll get through it together. I wanted to believe her, but all I could think about was the envelope in my jacket pocket. 2 days later, we went to the lawyer's office for the reading of the will. I didn't want to go. It felt wrong, like I was rushing to divide up my dad's life before his grave was even settled. But Charlotte insisted. It's just a formality, she said. The sooner we handle this, the sooner we can move forward. The lawyer's office was quiet and cold. Wood paneling, leather chairs, a desk that looked like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Mr. Thornton, my dad's lawyer, was an older black man with kind eyes and a firm handshake. He'd known my dad for years. Marcus, he said warmly, I'm so sorry for your loss. Harold was a good friend. Thank you. Charlotte sat beside me, her hand on my knee, supportive, present. Mr. Thornton opened a folder and pulled out a document. Let's get started. This shouldn't take long. He began reading the will. Standard stuff at first. My dad's savings, his truck, the garage property. Then Mr. Thornton paused. And the remainder of Harold Reed's estate, including all financial assets, property holdings, and investments, is to be left to. He looked up at me. Marcus Reed's first wife. The room went silent. I blinked. What? Charlotte's hand tightened on my knee. Mr. Thornton continued. The estate, valued at approximately $4.3 million, is to be transferred to Danielle Brooks, formerly Danielle Reed, provided she can be located and verified as the legal recipient. My ears were ringing. $4.3 million. My dad had $4.3 million. On dollars? Charlotte stood up slowly. Her voice was tight, controlled. There must be a mistake. Mr. Thornton shook his head. No mistake. Harold was very clear about his wishes. But Marcus is his son, and Marcus is accounted for in other ways. Mr. Thornton looked at me. Your father left you the garage, his personal effects, and a separate trust for your future children, should you have any. But the bulk of the estate goes to Danielle. I couldn't speak. Charlotte's face was pale. Who is Danielle Brooks? Mr. Thornton looked at me, waiting. I swallowed hard. My ex-wife. We didn't talk on the drive home. Charlotte gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. Her jaw was clenched. Her breathing was shallow. When we got back to the penthouse, she poured herself a drink and downed it in one gulp. Explain, she said. There's nothing to explain. You were married before? Yeah, a long time ago. How long? We got married when I was, 22. Divorced 2 years later. Charlotte stared at me like I was a stranger. And you never thought to mention this? It didn't seem relevant. Didn't seem. She laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. Your father just left $4 million to your ex-wife, and it didn't seem relevant? I didn't know he had that kind of money. Obviously. She poured another drink. What else don't I know about you, Marcus? I stood up. What's that supposed to mean? It means you lied to me. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell you about a marriage that ended almost a decade ago. A marriage that apparently mattered more to your father than ours does. That hit different. I stared at her. You think this is about you? Isn't it? She set down her glass and crossed her arms. I married you, Marcus. I stood by you. And now I find out your father didn't trust me enough to leave me anything. He didn't owe you anything. The words came out harsher than I meant them. Charlotte's face went cold. Get out. What? Get out. Go to a hotel. Go to your precious garage. I don't care. Just leave. I grabbed my jacket and walked out. I ended up at Julio's place. He opened the door in sweatpants and a t-shirt, took one look at my face and stepped aside. Come in. I told him everything. The will. Danielle. Charlotte's reaction. When I finished, Julio leaned back on his couch and whistled low. Man, your pops really did that. I don't understand why. Maybe he saw something you didn't. I pulled the envelope out of my jacket pocket, the one my dad had given me at the hospital. Julio noticed. What's that? A letter? From my dad. He told me to read it if something happened to him. You haven't opened it yet? I shook my head. Then open it. I stared at the envelope. My hands were shaking. Finally, I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly, my dad's handwriting. Marcus, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't stay longer. I'm sorry I can't be there to help you through what comes next. By now, you know about the will. You're probably angry, confused. Maybe you think I betrayed you. I didn't. I did this to protect you. Because the woman you married doesn't love you, son. She loves what she thought you'd inherit. I saw it the first time I met her. The way she looked at you, like you were a project, a chess piece. Danielle was different. She loved you when you had nothing. She left because you weren't ready, not because she didn't care. I stayed in touch with her over the years. She's a good woman, a strong woman, and if I'm right, she's raising your son. Yes, your son. His name is Jamal. He's 7 years old. Danielle never told you because she didn't want to trap you. She wanted you to choose fatherhood, not stumble into it. I'm leaving everything to her because she'll use it right. She'll protect that boy. She'll make sure he has what he needs. And if you're the man I raised you to be, you'll step up. You'll be there for him. Don't chase the money, Marcus. Chase what matters. Your father, Harold. The letter fell from my hands. I had a son, a 7-year-old son. Julio picked up the letter and read it. When he finished, he looked at me with wide eyes. Marcus? I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could see was my dad's handwriting, his warning, his love. I need to find her, I said. Now? Right now. It took me 2 hours to track down Danielle's address. She still lived in the same neighborhood where we'd rented our first apartment together. A modest part of town, small houses, chain link fences, basketball hoops in driveways. I pulled up outside a pale blue house with a neat lawn and a bike lying on its side near the porch. My heart was pounding. I walked up to the door and knocked. Footsteps inside, a lock turning. The door opened, and there she was. Danielle, she looked the same, older maybe, tired, but the same warm brown eyes, the same careful smile. Marcus, she said, her voice barely a whisper. Hi, Danny. She stared at me for a long moment, then her face hardened. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. About what? About my dad, about the will. I paused. About Jamal. Her whole body went stiff. You know, she said quietly, my dad left me a letter. She closed her eyes and sighed. When she opened them again, there were tears there. You should have told me, I said. You weren't ready. That wasn't your decision to make. Yes, it was. She stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind her. You were 24, Marcus. You were barely keeping your own life together. I wasn't going to trap you. He's my son. I know that, and I've spent every day since he was born making sure he had everything he needed. Food, clothes, stability, love. Her voice cracked. I did that alone. I felt the weight of those words like a punch. I'm sorry, I said. Sorry doesn't change 7 years. We stood there in silence. Then the door opened behind her. A boy stepped out, small, dark curly hair, eyes like mine. Mom, he said. Who's that? Danielle turned and put a hand on his shoulder. Just someone I used to know, baby. Go back inside. Okay. The boy, Jamal, looked at me once more, then disappeared into the house. I stared at the closed door. That was my son, and he didn't even know who I was. Danielle crossed her arms. You need to leave, Marcus. I want to be in his life. You don't get to just show up and decide that. I know, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere. She studied me for a long moment. Why now? Because of the money? No, because I didn't know, and now I do. And your wife? Does she know? I hesitated. Not yet. Danielle laughed bitterly. Of course not. Danny, go home, Marcus. Figure out your life. Then we'll talk. She went back inside and closed the door. I stood there on her porch, staring at that closed door, feeling like I'd just lost something I didn't know I had. When I got back to the penthouse, Charlotte was waiting. She was calm, too calm. We need to talk, she said. I nodded. She poured herself another drink and sat down across from me. I've been thinking. about the will, about your ex-wife. Okay, we can contest it. I blinked. What? The will. We can challenge it in court. Your father clearly wasn't in his right mind. He was sick, medicated. We can argue undue influence. Charlotte, no. Marcus, that money should be yours, ours. It's not about the money. Then what is it about? I took a deep breath. I have a son. Charlotte went very still. What? Danielle, my ex-wife. She has my son. He's 7. I didn't know until today. Charlotte's face went blank. Then, something dark flickered behind her eyes. So, your father left millions to the woman raising your illegitimate child. He's not illegitimate. He's my son. A son you didn't even know existed until a dead man's letter told you. She stood up. This is insane. I know it's a lot. A lot? Marcus, you've been lying to me since we met. I haven't lied about anything. You lied about your past, about your marriage, about having a child. Her voice was rising now. What else are you hiding? Nothing. She laughed. I don't believe you. We stared at each other, and for the first time since I'd met her, I saw Charlotte clearly, not the polished, controlled woman who smiled at charity events, but the person underneath, the one who saw people as assets, who calculated every move. I'm going to see him, I said quietly. Jamal. I'm going to be in his life. Charlotte's jaw tightened. And where does that leave us? I don't know. She picked up her glass and finished her drink in one swallow. Fine, she said coldly. Do what you need to do, but don't expect me to play happy family with your ex-wife and her kid. He's not her kid. He's mine. Then prove it. The next morning, Charlotte was gone before I woke up. She left a note on the kitchen counter. Business trip. Back Friday. We'll talk then. I crumpled the note and threw it away. Then I got dressed and drove straight to Danielle's house. She opened the door wearing jeans and an old sweatshirt, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked tired. Marcus, it's 7 in the morning. I know, I'm sorry, but I need to talk to you. Really talk. She sighed and stepped aside. Come in. The house was small but clean. Toys in the corner, pictures on the walls, a life I wasn't part of. Danielle led me to the kitchen and poured 2 cups of coffee. We sat at the table, and for a minute, neither of us said anything. He looks like me, I finally said. Yeah, he does. Why didn't you tell me, Danny? She stared into her coffee. Because you weren't ready to be a father. You were still trying to figure out who you were. I didn't want to trap you. You should have let me make that choice. Maybe, she looked up at me. But I made mine, and I don't regret it. Jamal has had a good life, a stable life. Without a father, without a father who wasn't ready. Her voice was firm. I did what I thought was best for him. I nodded slowly. I get that, but I'm here now, and I want to know him. It's not that simple. Why not? Because you're married, Marcus, to a woman who clearly has her own plans, and I'm not going to let Jamal get caught in the middle of whatever mess you're in. I leaned back in my chair. Charlotte doesn't know about him yet. Not really. Then you need to tell her, because if you're serious about being in Jamal's life, she needs to know what she's signing up for. She won't take it well. That's not my problem. Danielle's eyes were hard. You made choices, Marcus. Now you have to live with them. Before I could respond, I heard footsteps on the stairs. Jamal walked into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes. He stopped when he saw me. Oh, it's you again? I smiled. Yeah, it's me. He looked at his mom. Who is he? Danielle glanced at me, then back at Jamal. His name is Marcus. He's an old friend. Jamal studied me for a moment, then shrugged and grabbed a box of cereal from the counter. I watched him pour milk into a bowl and sit down at the table. He had my nose, my hands. The way he moved, confident but careful, reminded me of myself at that age. You like basketball? I asked. Jamal looked up. Yeah. Who's your favorite player? LeBron. I grinned. Good choice. He smiled back. Just a little. Then he went back to eating his cereal. Danielle watched us with guarded eyes. After a few minutes, she stood up. Jamal, go get dressed. You've got school in an hour. Okay, Mom. He grabbed his bowl and headed upstairs. When he was gone, Danielle turned to me. You can't just show up and be his hero, Marcus. It doesn't work like that. I know. He doesn't know who you are, and I'm not going to tell him until I know you're serious, until I know you're not going to disappear when things get hard. I won't. Prove it. I spent the next week proving it. I showed up every morning before Jamal went to school. I helped him with homework, played basketball in the driveway, listened when he talked about video games and friends and the things 7-year-olds care about. Danielle watched from a distance, testing me, waiting for me to fail, but I didn't. Charlotte called twice during that week. I didn't answer. Julio checked in every day. You okay, man? Yeah, I think I am. And Charlotte? We'll deal with that when she gets back. Friday came too fast. Charlotte texted that she'd be home by 6. We needed to talk. I knew what that meant. I drove back to the penthouse that afternoon and walked into a war zone. Charlotte was sitting on the couch, her laptop open, a glass of wine already half empty. Welcome back, I said. She looked up. Her eyes were cold. Sit down. I sat. She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a photo. Me and Jamal, playing basketball. Someone had taken it from across the street. Who sent you that? I asked. Does it matter? Her voice was tight. You've been spending all week with your ex-wife and her son. My son? A son you didn't know existed until last week. That doesn't make him less mine. Charlotte closed the laptop and leaned back. Let me be very clear, Marcus. I did not sign up for this. Sign up for what? A ready-made family, a child, an ex-wife who gets millions of dollars that should have been ours. It was never ours. It should have been. She stood up, her control slipping. I married you. I stood by you. I brought you into my world. And this is how you repay me? I didn't ask for any of this. Neither did I. She paced the room. Do you have any idea how this looks? My husband, running off to play daddy with his ex? My mother is already asking questions. Trey keeps texting me, checking if I'm okay. Trey? Yes, Trey. Because unlike you, he actually cares about me. The words hung in the air. I stood up slowly. What are you saying? Charlotte crossed her arms. I'm saying you need to choose, me or them. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Marcus. You either commit to this marriage or you walk away. But you don't get both. I looked at her, really looked at her, and I realized my dad was right. She didn't love me. She loved control. She loved the idea of me, the project, the upgrade, but she didn't love the real me. I choose Jamal, I said quietly. Her face went pale. Excuse me? I choose my son. I choose being the kind of man my dad wanted me to be. Charlotte's eyes filled with something dark. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's mine to make. She grabbed her phone. Fine, but don't expect this to be easy. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you really are. Go ahead. I'll make Danielle look like a gold digger. I'll make you look like a deadbeat. I'll take everything. I walked toward the door. You can't take what I never cared about. Marcus, I left. Charlotte kept her promise. Within 2 days, her friends were posting vague comments online, calling me a user, a liar, someone who married for money and ran when he got caught. Customers at the garage started asking questions. A few canceled appointments. Julio stood by me. Let them talk. They'll get bored. But it wasn't just talk. Danielle started getting messages, anonymous texts, calls from unknown numbers saying cruel things. She's trying to scare me, Danielle said one night, trying to make me push you away. I won't let her hurt you. This isn't about me, Marcus. It's about Jamal. If she comes after him, she won't. I'll make sure of it. But I wasn't sure I could keep that promise. Then, Evelyn showed up. She came to Danielle's house on a Tuesday morning, dressed like she was going to a board meeting. Danielle called me immediately. Charlotte's mother is here. Don't let her in. Too late. I drove over as fast as I could. When I got there, Evelyn was sitting in Danielle's living room like she owned it. Marcus, she said calmly. Good. You should hear this too. Hear what? Evelyn pulled out a folder and set it on the coffee table. A very generous offer. $500,000 for Danielle to sign over the inheritance and disappear. Danielle's jaw tightened. I'm not disappearing. Then you're a fool. Evelyn's voice was cold. People like you don't survive public scrutiny. One story in the right paper and everyone will think you're a con artist, a woman who tricked a dying man into changing his will. That's not what happened. It doesn't matter what happened. It matters what people believe. Evelyn stood up. Take the money. Protect your son. Walk away. Danielle stood up too. Get out of my house. Evelyn smiled. You're making a mistake. Leave. Now. Evelyn picked up her folder and walked to the door. She paused and looked at me. You're throwing your life away for a woman who didn't even tell you she had your child. Think about that. Then she left. Danielle sat down hard on the couch. Her hands were shaking. I sat beside her. You okay? No? She looked at me. Marcus, this is only going to get worse. I know. Are you ready for that? I thought about my dad, about Jamal, about the man I wanted to be. Yeah, I said, I am. That night, Danielle and I sat on her porch while Jamal did his homework inside. I need to tell him, she said quietly, about you, about who you are. Are you sure? If we're going to do this, really do this, he deserves to know the truth. I nodded. Okay. She called Jamal outside. He sat between us, looking curious. What's up? Danielle took a deep breath. Jamal, there's something we need to tell you. He looked at me, then back at her. Okay. Marcus isn't just my old friend, she said gently. He's your father. Jamal blinked. My dad? Yeah, I said. My voice was rough. I'm your dad. He stared at me for a long moment. Where were you? The question hit like a hammer. I didn't know about you, I said honestly. Your mom and I were married a long time ago and then we went our separate ways. I didn't know she was going to have you, but now I do. And I want to be here, if you'll let me. Jamal looked down at his hands. Why didn't you know? Because I wasn't ready to be a good dad back then, I said. But I'm ready now. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, Do you like video games? I smiled. I used to. I'm probably pretty bad now. I could teach you. I'd like that. He nodded. Okay. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. Charlotte launched her smear campaign the next day. She posted a carefully worded statement on social media. Nothing directly accusatory, just enough to plant seeds. Sometimes the people we trust the most turn out to be strangers, learning painful truths about my marriage and choosing to move forward with grace. Her friends shared it, added their own comments, painted me as a liar and Danielle as a schemer. The garage lost more customers. Julio and I picked up a contract job maintaining a small delivery fleet. It wasn't much, but it kept us afloat. I showed up for Jamal every day, drove him to school, helped with homework, sat through soccer practice. People stared, whispered. I didn't care. 3 months passed. Slowly, things started to shift. Charlotte's circle started whispering about her instead, about how she'd married a working class man and lost when the money didn't follow. Trey stopped answering her calls. Evelyn grew cold toward her. The scandal was bad for business, bad for the family name. Charlotte tried one last time to break me. She showed up at Danielle's house in her luxury car, dressed to kill, and offered me a deal. Come back, she said. Say Danielle manipulated you. Say you were confused. I'll take you back. We'll fix this. I looked at her and felt nothing. No, I said. Marcus, you're throwing away everything. I'm not throwing away anything. I'm choosing what matters. She stared at me, and for the first time I saw fear in her eyes. You'll regret this, she said. I don't think I will. She drove away, and I never saw her again. 6 months after my dad died, I bought a car. Not just any car, a matte black Lamborghini. I didn't need it. I still lived simply, still worked at the garage, still showed up for Jamal every single day. But I wanted something for me, something that said I'd survived. I pulled up outside Danielle's house one afternoon. Jamal was playing in the yard. He saw the car and his eyes went huge. Whoa, whose car is that? Mine, I said. Seriously? Seriously. He ran over and stared at it like it was a spaceship. Can I sit in it? Yeah. Come on. I opened the door, and he climbed into the passenger seat. His smile was so wide it hurt to look at. Danielle came out onto the porch, arms crossed, but she was smiling too. You're ridiculous, she said. Maybe. Jamal looked at me. Can we go for a drive? I glanced at Danielle. She hesitated, then nodded. One loop around the block, she said. Deal. I started the engine. Jamal whooped as we pulled away from the curb. In the rearview mirror, I saw Danielle watching us, still cautious, still guarded, but hopeful. Across town, Charlotte sat in her penthouse alone. Her mother wasn't speaking to her. Trey had moved on. Her friends had found new drama to focus on. She scrolled through social media and saw a photo someone had posted. Me and Jamal, laughing in front of the Lamborghini. She stared at it for a long time. Then she closed her laptop and poured herself another drink. That night, I tucked Jamal into bed. Dad? He said quietly. He'd started calling me that a few weeks ago. Yeah, buddy? Are you gonna stay? I sat on the edge of his bed. Yeah, I'm gonna stay. Forever? One day at a time, but yeah, I'm not going anywhere. He smiled and closed his eyes. I sat there for a while, watching him breathe, thinking about everything that had happened. My dad was right. Charlotte never loved me. She loved the idea of me, the control, the project. But Danielle? She'd loved me when I had nothing. And even after I left, even after I hurt her, she'd built a life for our son. A good life. I didn't know if Danielle and I would ever be together again. That wasn't the point. The point was showing up, being consistent, choosing what mattered. I walked downstairs. Danielle was cleaning up the kitchen. He asleep? She asked. Yeah. She dried her hands on a towel and looked at me. You did good today. Thanks. We stood there for a moment. The air between us was different now. Softer. Marcus, she said quietly, I know this hasn't been easy, and I know you're still figuring things out with Charlotte and everything else, but, she paused, you're doing the right thing. Being here for him. I should have been here from the beginning. You're here now. That's what matters. I nodded. She walked over and put a hand on my arm. Just for a second. Thank you. Then she let go and went back to cleaning. I watched her for a moment, then grabbed my jacket. I'll see you tomorrow, I said. Same time? Same time? I drove home slowly, not to Charlotte's penthouse. I'd moved out weeks ago. I had a small apartment now. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. When I got there, I sat on the couch and pulled out my phone. I scrolled through photos of Jamal. Him holding a wrench in the garage, him laughing in the Lamborghini, him asleep on Danielle's couch after movie night. A good AO life. A real life. Charlotte had tried to destroy me, tried to shame me into crawling back. But I didn't. I walked away, built something new, showed up for my son. And that was the quietest, strongest revenge I could have asked for. I didn't need applause, didn't need vindication. I just needed to know I'd done the right thing. And I had. Months later, on a random Tuesday morning, I was dropping Jamal off at school when I saw it. Charlotte's car, parked down the street, just sitting there. She didn't get out, didn't approach, she just watched. Jamal ran toward the school entrance, and I waved. He waved back, smiling. I glanced at Charlotte's car one more time, then I got in the Lamborghini and drove away. I didn't need to say anything, didn't need to confront her. She already knew. She'd lost, not because I'd fought her, but because I'd refused to play her game. I chose dignity, chose fatherhood, chose the kind of man my dad had raised me to be, and that was enough.